Good Friday morning. I'm Stephen Romo.
And I'm Valerie Castro. Joe and Savannah are on assignment. Right now on Morning News Now, on the world stage, dueling diplomatic efforts from President Biden overseas this morning. Meeting with world leaders at the G7 summit in Japan, he's weighing potential economic disaster at home and tough new sanctions on Russia. And overnight, a Western official telling NBC News President Zelenskyy is expected to attend the summit in person after a stop in Saudi Arabia this morning, adding a new layer of pressure to Russia's offensive. We've got team coverage this morning. Also in jeopardy, a new warning this morning as the fiery debt ceiling debate rages on in Washington. Medicare access for millions of Americans could be called into jeopardy if a deal isn't reached. The GOP proposal that's taking center stage in this high-stakes showdown. Real estate rumble, good news and bad news on the housing market this morning. Home prices saw their biggest drop in over a decade last month, but sales were also down. We'll dig deeper into those new numbers and what you should know if you're looking to buy. And change of tune, live music is back in full swing. Massive names like Taylor Swift taking the stage after a pandemic pause. But for many concert goers, their fellow fans just aren't hitting the right notes. A concert culture shift explained later this hour.
Oh, I hope it's not singing along. That's my favorite part of concerts.
Me too, right?
Okay.
So good. Happy Friday morning to you. Good to be here.
Yeah, great to be here.
We start this hour with the latest in the G7 summit and the new information this morning that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is expected to attend in person.
Yeah, this morning he landed in Saudi Arabia. The meeting there should happen before he heads to Japan, and his trip will continue on to Hiroshima. More countries announced tougher sanctions against Russia as a way to try to stop its invasion of Ukraine. At the same time, looming in the background of these talks, of course, is the prospect of a possible U.S. debt default and the massive effects it could have, not just here in the U.S., but on the global economy. NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli joins us now from the meeting site in Japan with more on this. Mike, good morning to you. We do want to start with those new developments we just mentioned. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy will attend the G7 in person. He's in Saudi Arabia this morning. What more do we know about that?
Yes, Stephen, Ukraine was always going to be at the top of the agenda for this three-day G7 summit here in Hiroshima. And the Japanese prime minister had indicated yesterday that President Zelenskyy was likely to participate in some fashion in the summit on Sunday. Well, now a Western official is confirming that President Zelenskyy is now expected to travel to this summit in person to meet with the G7 leaders on Sunday. Now, of course, the details of his travel are not being disclosed to protect his security. And given the length of that travel and the security concerns, it is possible that those plans could change. But this would be an important show of force, an opportunity for Zelenskyy to speak with the G7 leaders as a group in person at a critical moment. He's been ramping up the diplomatic offensive of late. Just in the past week, he's traveled to the United Kingdom, to France, to Germany, to Italy. He even met with Pope Francis ahead of a planned spring offensive by Ukraine. This is a critical moment for the Ukraine conflict and one that Zelenskyy is now pressing leaders in person to provide even more support for.
And Mike, we're now nearly a year and a half into Russia's war on Ukraine. Of course, as you mentioned, Ukraine dominating the G7. What do we know about these new sanctions that have been announced against Russia?
Yeah, these sanctions, I think, fall into two broad categories. And the first, you have efforts to really tighten the screws, to increase enforcement of existing sanctions. There has been certainly a number of attempts by Russian officials to evade the sanctions that have been piling up from the West over the course of the last year. But then there's a second category of sanction, which is to target those remaining sources of revenue for Russia's war effort. If you believe it, this includes the selling of diamonds. We've seen increasing pressure, including what was announced at the G7 summit last year, which is that oil price cap that brings in significant revenue for the Russian government. But this is a further escalation in the West's efforts to tighten those screws, as I said, on Russia. President Biden recently said that one of the things he's proudest of during his time in office so far is the ability he's been able to show to keep our allies in lockstep in support of Ukraine. So now this is another collective step by the G7, and each of these individual countries may go even further with their own sanctions.
And Mike, speaking of President Biden, we can't ignore the pressing domestic news, the negotiations over raising the debt ceiling as that timeline continues to tick down. But this could also have effects on the global stage. Are we expecting to hear more on that?
Yeah, certainly President Biden in the sidelines of this summit, probably hearing an earful from his global counterparts about the situation back home. And as the president has been taking part in G7 activities today, he's also been getting updates from his staff back home. We've seen those negotiations on Capitol Hill on Thursday. Well, President Biden did have a briefing with some of his staff as he started his day earlier on Friday. And just in the last hour, we learned that President Biden has left a dinner of the G7 leaders early so that he can get an update again from his staff. You understand the time zone challenges here. President Biden, at the end of his day, aides at the start of their day. He'll get the latest information as he's kicking off, ending his first day here.
All right, and more to come on that. Mike Memley, thanks so much.
Back here at home, negotiations are ongoing to try to reach a deal to raise the debt ceiling. We're just days away from the June 1st deadline. The date Treasury Secretary Yellen said the country could risk defaulting on its debt if a deal isn't reached. That could send stocks plummeting, affecting 401ks and retirement funds, and even possibly leave the government with no way to pay its workers. On a call with community leaders yesterday, Vice President Kamala Harris criticized Republicans and warned about the potential dangers of a debt default.
For Republicans in Congress, this issue is not really about lowering our nation's debt, because if they really cared about lowering our debt, they would not also fight to protect trillions of dollars in Trump tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans and the biggest corporations.
NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale joins us now with more on that. Ali, so negotiations have continued even with President Biden attending the G7 summit, and there have been some hopeful signs that progress is being made, especially some new comments from House Speaker McCarthy, right?
Yeah, look, the tone has shifted significantly here, Valerie, from the start of the week when I talked to the speaker and he was very pessimistic, very dour on the tone of the talks. And now you're hearing him not just say that they're productive, but also we're starting to see some similar themes start to take shape publicly, which means they could be starting to coalesce around points of a deal in these backroom dealings that they're doing between the speaker's closest allies and the White House's top aides. McCarthy, though, keeps trumpeting this need for a timeline and a framework by this weekend. That's different than what the White House is saying, but here's the speaker anyway. Watch.
It would be important to try to have the agreement, especially in principle, by sometime this weekend. Look, we're not there. We haven't agreed to anything yet, but I see the path that we could come to an agreement.
Now, look, you're seeing him there say he sees a path to an agreement, which to me is significant because, again, he had been very pessimistic about talks earlier this week. And then, of course, the timeline bit here. There could be a few reasons why the speaker wants to do this well ahead of deadline, which is not something that Congress typically does. They're typically very deadline oriented, almost like journalists in that kind of a way. But instead, you're seeing McCarthy say that he wants to have a deal done framework wise by this weekend. That would allow them to come back early next week. He wants the House to go first on this. The Senate is out on recess anyway next week. They could be called back if anything significant starts happening. But nevertheless, we're seeing McCarthy really putting the urgency on here because June 1st gets closer every minute.
And Republicans have tied massive spending cuts to any deal to raise the debt ceiling. And now we're learning about a Republican proposal to tie eligibility for Medicaid to a certain number of hours worked each month. But the Congressional Budget Office is warning this could put health insurance in jeopardy for millions of people.
And look, the CBO are not the only people warning about people potentially losing Medicaid. This is something that Democrats are warning about, too, as we start to see more of the conversation on Capitol Hill shift around this potential for work requirements to be included for some federal programs, including SNAP and other food assistance programs. We know that several progressive Democrats on the Senate side, for example, are circulating a letter right now. They have 11 signatories so far, urging the president to use the 14th Amendment to avert this crisis unilaterally, instead of going through with these Republican negotiations that could be things that Democrats are not supportive of. Nevertheless, we're seeing posturing really from both sides on the progressive left and on the more far right, agitating for the things that they want in this deal. The White House, for their part, has sort of left the door open on work requirements, but we don't know specifically what's in the deal till it's in the deal.
Ali, we know every vote is critical. Senator Dianne Feinstein was back in Washington this week after a long medical absence. And this morning, we're learning more about a serious medical complication she had. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, look, she'd been out for several weeks from shingles. That started in February. And of course, during the intervening months that she was out of Washington, it stalled some of the work of the important Judiciary Committee that she sits on. And it also spurred some people in the California delegation, but also in Congress writ large, to question whether or not she was able to do this job. And if she couldn't return to Washington, pressuring her to retire her seat early. That would, of course, kick off a lot of political dynamics in California. Feinstein, though, ultimately several weeks ago coming back to Washington, but we're now learning of other complications from the shingles virus that she contracted, things like encephalitis as well as Ramsay-Hunt syndrome. You can see the drooping on one side of her face, and it leads to questions about whether or not she's up for this job, especially as some of the effects of those health problems can be things like memory loss or confusion. Certainly those were questions that were asked about Feinstein's fitness even before she contracted shingles, but now those questions are certainly up for debate. As you see her looking frail as she walks around the Senate, this is a demanding job physically to get to and from the floor. Of course, also the dense subject matter and long days. Of course, there are others who defend her who say she can do this job, she will do this job until the end of her term.
Yes, so much at stake. Okay, Allie, thank you so much.
Well, after months of speculation and rumors, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is moving forward with plans to announce his run for president next week. And this news comes as Disney has announced it's scrapping plans to build a $1 billion development near Orlando as the company's ongoing feud with the governor continues. NBC News correspondent Dasha Burns gets us up to speed.
There you go. NBC News first to report Florida Governor Ron DeSantis plans to formally announce he is running for president next week, according to two sources close to his political operation.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
His team is also summoning his top donors to meetings in Miami in conjunction with the announcement. A source familiar with the plans tells NBC News. The move comes after a long period of DeSantis testing the political waters.
We're proud of what we've done in Florida, but I have only begun to fight.
Just last week, making several high-profile campaign-style stops in Iowa, where he's been refining his attack on his soon-to-be top rival, former President Donald J. Trump.
We must reject the culture of losing that has infected our party in recent years. The time for excuses is over.
But the former president attacking DeSantis head-on, trying to take out his biggest rival early with a familiar battle plan.
The problem with Ron DeSanctimonious is that he needs a personality transplant, and those are not yet available.
Ron DeSantis, did anyone ever hear of DeSantis, DeSanctimonious?
They keep saying, oh, I think DeSantis can do okay with farmers. I don't think so. Based on polls, he's not doing okay with anything.
The DeSantis strategy establishing himself as the anti-woke candidate.
What we've said in Florida is we are going to remain a refuge of sanity.
And leaning into legislation to boost his conservative bona fides. This week, signing bills banning gender-affirming care for trans minors and expanding the controversial parental rights and education law that critics call the Don't Say Gay bill. That bill leading to a high-profile battle with Disney, the entertainment giant announcing it's scrapping plans for a new $1 billion Florida campus amid its bitter dispute with DeSantis.
Part of the reason I think we've been able to do well in Florida is I don't look at polls to tell me what to do.
While he may say he doesn't look at the polls, Trump's lead over DeSantis has widened considerably. In February, he was within reach, but now that gap has expanded over 35 points, something he has been on the defensive about in the past.
I'm not a candidate, so we'll see if and when that changes.
A shadow campaign soon stepping into the 2024 spotlight.
And our thanks to Dasha Burns for that report. In the last 24 hours, by the way, more than a quarter of former President Trump's social media posts have in some way gone after his soon-to-be rival.
Turning now to the Supreme Court, the justices handed down several high-profile rulings this week, ranging from Silicon Valley to the art world. The court is expected to ramp up its rulings as they begin preparing for summer recess, which typically happens at the end of June. Let's bring in attorney and legal analyst Angela Senadella to help us break down these Supreme Court decisions. So, Angela, good morning. Let's start with two cases involving tech giants Google and Twitter. Both of these lawsuits had the potential to drastically change the rules of the internet. What were these cases about? How did the court rule, and how big a win was this for Silicon Valley?
So these rulings were a huge win for Silicon Valley, largely because the opposite ruling would have been catastrophic. And that's because many of these companies in Silicon Valley make their money off of the algorithm. So the content is user generated, as you see in YouTube, and then the algorithm that's personalized and proprietary farms and feeds content to users based on their preferences. That's why if you, for example, like cats and you watch one video about cats, you might see a whole lot of videos about cats. But what these cases try to do is hold the companies responsible if any of that algorithmic provided content led to bad acts. And Section 230, which was at stake here, protects companies from this type of liability, and that remains intact. That means Silicon Valley can breathe deeply because they will not be held liable if that user-generated content leads to crimes.
Okay, so let's turn now to a case involving an iconic piece of art from Andy Warhol. Photographer Lynn Goldsmith claimed Warhol stole her picture of Prince without enough premise to constitute fair use when he created a series of works of Prince. The court ruled in favor of Goldsmith 7-2, but there was some division over the consequences the ruling would have for art. Walk us through all of that.
Yes, this is fascinating because both the majority and the dissent here were really trying to argue in the name of creativity. But ultimately, the majority in a 7-2 decision argued in favor of the original artist, saying that if a photographer like the one here creates an image of Prince, when somebody like Andy Warhol, no matter how famous you are, just takes that image and, for example, changes the color, turns it into a sort of silkscreen, that is not enough of a transformation, so the legal term is transformative use, to be declared a separate work of art. That means if you are someone like Andy Warhol, well, guess what? You have to get a license from that original photographer to sell art like he did. But the dissent said, no, you're stifling creativity. Andy Warhol is an icon. You can't claim that his artwork is derivative. I also think technology today is super relevant because maybe back then you couldn't really make such derivative art easily. But today with AI, with digital resources, a lot of people, frankly, could do what Andy Warhol did.
Yeah, technology changing so much in the art world these days. Angela Senadella, thanks so much.
Turning now to the latest on a massive fire in North Carolina. Crews there are searching for 2 missing workers after the 5-alarm fire at a construction site hit Thursday morning. At least 15 other construction workers had to be rescued from those flames. NBC News correspondent Shaq Brewster brings us the details.
Hi there. Well, the scene of this apartment complex that was under construction is now contained. The fire chief said you can expect to see crews here for an extended period of time as the investigation into what caused this fire is just beginning. 2 construction workers are missing after a massive 5-alarm fire in Charlotte, North Carolina.
It was huge. The pictures were terrifying.
The rapidly moving flames began around 9 a.m., taking over an apartment building under construction.
A very fast-moving fire, high heat conditions, well over 2,000 degrees. And as a construction site is open, a lot of wood is exposed.
The dense smoke could be seen for miles, the mayor warning residents to stay indoors.
It was very hot in the smoke, the water in my eyes. It was insane. I've never experienced anything like this.
More than 90 firefighters responded. Officials say rescuing 15 workers from the construction site, including one pulled from a crane and taken to the hospital. The blaze so intense at times, some firefighters needed help.
We had several maydays.
Mill Creek Residential, the company who owns the apartment building, says no residents were living there and that our #1 priority is the health and safety of the people who are working there today and those in the surrounding area. And unfortunately, we have not heard any updated information about the 2 construction workers who were missing after this fire. The police department reaching out to the public online saying if you know of someone who was supposed to be at this scene and haven't heard from them, they're asking for your help.
Scary situation. Shaq, thank you.
Now pull out your umbrellas because it could get a little rainy near you this weekend.
Yeah, let's bring in meteorologist Michelle Grossman for a check on our Morning News Now forecast. Hey, Michelle.
Hey, Hey there, guys. Great to see you. Happy Friday. And yeah, we're going to need the umbrella in spots. We need the umbrella in spots this morning because we have heavy rain falling throughout the southern plains. This is a look at radar over the last 6 hours. This is what we're going to be tracking throughout the day. Clear to see where the cold front is. It stretches from the Midwest all the way down to the southern plains. So you can see some heavy rain. That's where we're seeing the yellows, reds, oranges, those bright colors. That's indicating the heavy rain falling. And that will be the story as we go throughout this Friday. So numerous rounds of showers. And then by this afternoon, this evening, once we get that daytime heating going, we could see some showers and storms, and some could be strong to severe, especially in portions of Texas into Arkansas. So as we're looking along the southeast coast, we're also watching a coastal low that's bringing some showers along the Carolinas. That's going to move off to the north and east. So this is what today looks like. We're looking at a nice day in the northeast. Enjoy it because things are changing tomorrow. It's going to be a wet start to the weekend for many of us, stretching from New England all the way down to the Gulf Coast states. Now, the northeast, we need the rain, but it just comes on the weekend, so not ideal. The middle of the country, we're watching the chance for those severe storms. And then back to the west, we continue to bake. We're looking at temperatures once again soaring into the 80s and 90s. Boise, you're going to be right around 89 degrees today. In terms of that severe weather threat, where you see the yellow, that is the likeliest spot for seeing some strong to severe storms. So places like Dallas, Waco, Austin, Fort Smith, Abilene, up to Lubbock, we're looking at the chance for these strong storms, 15 million at risk. And the main takeaways will be gusty winds, damaging winds, winds gusting over 60 miles per hour. Could see some large hail, even a tornado or two is possible. We expect those to be brief, and we can't rule them out, although that's on the lower side as opposed to the wind and also the hail. Here's the setup. We have that cold front that's moving through the middle of the country. It's stretching from the Midwest all the way down to portions of the southern plains. It's going to bring that severe risk from central Texas into Arkansas. And then look what happens tomorrow. It moves off to the east. So we're seeing that rain stretching from New England all the way down to the Gulf Coast states, finally moving offshore on Sunday. That's going to be better news for parts of the Northeast, New England on Sunday. We may start out with some showers, and then the tail end of that cold front, guys, we're going to see some showers continuing in parts of the Southeast on Saturday. Back to you.
Those umbrellas getting a workout.
Spring's not quite over, right?
Michelle, thanks so much. Well, coming up on Morning News Now, we've got a new update on those deadly floods happening in northern Italy.
Thousands have already been evacuated from their homes, and now this morning, dangerously high water levels are washing away critical farming infrastructure. We'll talk about the global implications next. We're back now with a closer look at the humanitarian crisis on the southern border. As migrants try to find a new life in this country, their children are also trying to continue their education. And one woman who was a refugee herself from Colombia is stepping in to help. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock has her story.
At a celebration of social changemakers in Miami, Estefania Rebellon takes it all in and has quite the story to tell.
I come from a family that unfortunately had to migrate. It was a forced migration. I was 10 years old at the time, and my dad unfortunately was targeted by the FARC in Colombia.
Threats of kidnapping prompting Estefania and her family to seek refuge from her home in Colombia to Miami in 2002, ultimately landing on her feet and gifted with a new perspective.
I always invite everyone to ask themselves, what would it take for you to leave your home? Literally, just today, put 2 outfits in a bag and go. That's what's happening to all these families, and it's extremely disruptive.
Devastatingly so for children, left without a safe zone or even basic schooling. But in 2018, as news reports highlighted caravans and treacherous journeys,
Yay!
Estefania says, a eureka moment. She pushed pause on her acting career to turn school buses into classrooms.
¿Esto qué es?
And shelters into safe spaces for learning, aided by the modern wonders of the internet.
How much does a school bus cost on eBay?
So our first bus was about $10,000, and then we ended up spending about $25,000 converting it. We learned everything on YouTube.
Rebellon and her Yes We Can World Foundation now have several buses in Tijuana and a full facility in Juarez, helping about 300 students at a time. In the 4 years the program's been running, she's enrolled around 2,500 kids.
Is this your life mission now?
Oh my gosh, that's a question I ask myself all the time. I think it's definitely sort of like purpose found me to eventually open a school. And it's just something that I always aspired to. It's just been something that it's been a 180 turn in my life, but it's definitely a life mission.
And the mission is blossoming. Kids between the ages of 3 and 15 can access emotional support and English as a second language. The help has flowed from many corners. Duolingo's founder donating iPads. Pop sensation Camila Cabello visiting Tijuana 2 years ago, posting about her experience. And the Elevate Prize Foundation hosting its first Make Good Famous Summit in Miami, honored Estefania with a grant for $10,000.
Estefania is the one who's closest to the issue, right? She has the proximity to the people, to the organizations, to the community. This is called trust-based philanthropy, and it's at the center of our values as a foundation.
With Title 42 only deepening the need, Estefania knows these children face an uphill battle.
It is something you carry with you. You're an immigrant forever, and it completely changes your life.
But in this case, with a few converted buses and a whole lot of care, Estefania's changing their lives too, driving a new direction of hope. Sam Brock, NBC News, Miami.
All right, turning now to Italy, where floods have devastated a region in the north of the country. According to government officials, at least 9 people are dead now, with at least 10,000 more people displaced from their homes. NBC News foreign correspondent Claudio Lavanga joins us now from Rome with more on this. Claudio, good morning to you. So we've seen this major devastation in Italy over the past few days now. What could the fallout be here? I know there's a lot of farmland there.
Well, that's right, Stephen. Well, first of all, the emergency is not over. This morning, the authorities found yet another body. Well, that brings the total death toll to 14, actually, not 9 as it was yesterday. And the emergency, as I said, is not over because now, after a break from the rain yesterday, it started raining again, bringing, of course, the worries among all the people that are clearing out the mess that this flooding and landslides caused and left behind, a trail of devastation. And a lot of people that were evacuated were able to go back to their houses to clear the mud that was left behind. But as you mentioned, there is also a major damage to the economy because that region, the Emilia-Romagna in the north of Italy, is a very highly productive region, especially when it comes to farming. So you have hundreds, if not thousands, of farmers there who've lost not only their crops, they've also lost a lot of animals. So the damage to the economy there is severe, even though, of course, there is no definitive estimate yet, Stephen.
So much fallout, and devastating to hear the death toll rising again, Claudio. We know this is just the latest natural disaster for that area. I know it sparked calls for some type of plan to be made to help with the impacts of natural disasters and climate change. What do we know about those efforts?
Well, that's right. The government has already said that they will hold an extraordinary meeting next Tuesday to face this situation, and they are expected then to call or declare the state of emergency for that region, and probably they will also issue funds to help the region to get back to its feet. But honestly, this is not the first extreme weather event in Italy. It is one of many that has affected this country for the past few months and years. Last year, it was the hottest year on record here in Italy, and droughts have become a real problem, prolonged drought. So there is being calls for the government to do something about it to face climate change and the effects of climate change for a while, but it's still unclear what can they do and how much that will cost, Stephen.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems and very few solutions. We did want to highlight something positive that's happened in that area, Claudio. Bruce Springsteen, I understand, held a concert in one of the areas affected. And initially, I think he was facing some criticism for not canceling that show. So how did it end up going?
Well, the concert was being held in Ferrara, which is a town in the region, but it's not one of those towns that were flooded and it wasn't affected. So the organizers decided to carry on. Some people on social media, presumably those without tickets, were criticizing the concert going ahead because they said, oh, you should cancel it or you should postpone it. Well, they said, fair enough. They said that they wanted to cancel it or postpone it out of respect of the people who lost their lives, but also to use the resources that were channeled through that concert, like Civil Protection Agency authorities, to the areas affected by the flooding. But the concert went ahead with 50,000 people attending. There were no problems there. Bruce Springsteen is playing Rome next on Sunday, so I have tickets for that, so I hope they don't cancel that one.
Let's hope. All right, Claudio, thanks so much for that update.
We're learning more this morning about that $75 million settlement that Deutsche Bank has agreed to pay to sex abuse victims of Jeffrey Epstein. It resolves a lawsuit filed last year by a group of Epstein's victims. NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett has more on this.
A massive settlement. A major bank accused of bankrolling convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, now compensating his victims. Deutsche Bank has agreed to pay $75 million to settle claims brought by an Epstein survivor accusing the bank of knowingly facilitating a sex trafficking operation in order to churn profits, enabling Epstein's abuse for years.
This is a watershed moment.
Sigrid McCauley represents the survivor, going only as Jane Doe in court papers to protect her identity.
These financial institutions who hold those purse strings being held to account for their involvement. I would say there's more to come with respect to the Epstein saga.
The settlement terms are still confidential, and Deutsche Bank has not publicly admitted any wrongdoing. It would not comment, but said the bank has made considerable progress in remedying a number of past issues. It previously faced a $150 million fine by state regulators for failing to monitor its dealings with Epstein. The former hedge fund manager was found dead in a Manhattan prison back in 2019, weeks after being charged with abusing dozens of underage girls, many of who've come forward to tell their stories.
I think everybody who knows something should say something. Help us put the pieces of our lives back together, because we're missing so much of it.
Even years after his death, the fallout over Wall Street's relationship with the disgraced financier continues, as J.P. Morgan Chase is now fighting similar claims of turning a blind eye to his conduct. CEO Jamie Dimon is set to be deposed next month. The bank has denied any liability.
As for Deutsche Bank, the case has been settled, but the judge still needs to officially sign off on the deal. The parties are expected to be back in court next month.
All right, Laura, thanks so much.
Well, coming up, keeping up with costs. A new warning this morning about just how much a trip to the pharmacy costs many older adults and the extreme measures some are taking to get the meds they need.
But first, some good news if you're in the market for a new home. Prices were down big last month, but so were sales. We'll dig into what's going on and what you should know if you're looking to buy. That's up next on This Morning News Now. We're back with new data on the state of our housing market.
Yeah, the National Association of Realtors says sales of existing homes in April were down just over 3% from last month. And that means they were down over 23% compared to last year, which is the biggest drop in 11 years now. NBC News business and data reporter Brian Chung joins us with a closer look at these numbers. So, Brian, good morning to you. So what is keeping buyers out of this market?
Well, it's high mortgage rates, right? So when you consider that it's going to cost about 6.5% to get a 30-year fixed mortgage, that's more than double what the rates were just 2 years ago. So that has sidelined a lot of buyers. It's meant that a lot of sellers have also had to settle for potentially lower prices in unloading a home. And that's the reason why the National Association for Realtors also said that home prices went down. So it's very interesting because that okay, great for buyers, right?
Yeah.
But you have to remember that it's going to depend on what market you're in. So in markets like the Northeast and also in the Midwest, we did see prices continue to go up. So it really depends on where you live.
We know summer is when the housing market typically heats up. So what do these numbers mean for the average American?
Yeah, what it means for the average American is that as you do continue to go out and try to buy a house, if you're actively trying to look for something, maybe try to cast a wide net, because if the expectation is that, yes, home prices might bid back up because a lot of people tend to buy in the summer, then you might see some bidding wars again, although probably nothing like you saw in 2020 when people were, getting 19, 20 offers, 20% over asking price. That might not happen in this market, but broadly speaking, you're just going to have to eat the higher cost of that higher mortgage if you do want to get back into it.
2020 was something else.
It's a weird market.
For so many reasons, that's for sure. So also taking into account the Fed's decision on the interest rates, how does the housing numbers, how does it affect that?
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily one for one, but what the Federal Reserve does on short-term interest rates do have a bearing on where mortgage rates go as well. The reason why we've seen mortgage rates rise as high as they've been is because of what the Federal Reserve's been doing. And it's not even clear if they're done hiking interest rates yet. We'll have to see in the next meeting in a few weeks. But because of that reason, that means that you should not expect to see mortgage rates go down, because the Fed is not going to start cutting interest rates anytime soon. At least that's what they say, which means don't expect to see 3% mortgage rates anytime soon, unfortunately.
All right, more to come on that. Brian, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Well, an alarming new report is putting a spotlight on just how expensive medications can be for seniors.
And it shows that patients are taking more extreme measures to make sure they can keep up with their doses. Dr. Adam Gaffney joins us now for more on this. He is a critical care physician at the Cambridge Health Alliance in Massachusetts. Dr. Gaffney, good morning. So walk us through what the study found, what's leading to this jump in people who can't afford medicine, and what measures are they taking to be able to pay for it?
Sure. So this is a very concerning report. Effectively, it was a national survey of adults 65 years of age and older, and it found that 1 in 5 went without needed medications because they couldn't afford it. And that could mean delaying filling a prescription, not filling a prescription, using someone else's prescription. And what they also found was that seniors are taking some pretty extreme steps in some cases because they can't afford their medications. For instance, 8.5% went without basic needs because of medication costs, and about 5% went into debt. This is a concerning study. It's consistent with prior studies, and it shows that action is needed to ensure that all patients can get the medications they need.
Be very scary. I've had relatives who skipped out on blood pressure medications, and I know there are lots of dangers associated with stuff like this. So what are some of those risks for skipping doses or trying to get creative instead of just taking the medication as prescribed?
Well, they can range a wide spectrum, but the consequences, frankly, could be deadly. We published a study last year that found that 1.3 million adults went without insulin because they couldn't afford it, rationed it. I work in an intensive care unit. If you don't take insulin and you have diabetes, you can wind up with a life-threatening complication called diabetic ketoacidosis. Obviously, the complications will differ by condition. Kids with asthma who can't afford their copays may have exacerbations. People with autoimmune conditions who don't take their expensive medications could have flares or exacerbations of their disease. So it depends upon the illness in question, but there's no question that the consequences of being unable to afford your medications can be serious from a medical perspective and can even be life-threatening.
So what can patients do if they want to find cheaper prices for their medicine? Do you have any tips for having that conversation with a doctor?
Well, as you said, you can speak with your physician, see if there are other equally effective but less costly medications that might treat your condition. There do exist certain low-cost generic options at certain retailers and online outlets. But I don't want to dwell too much on that, as important as it is, because I think it implies that the responsibility really is falling on patients here, whereas the reality is it should fall on society, on the healthcare system and on politicians to create a universal healthcare system that covers all patients, all men, women, and children for all the medications they need for their conditions. So there may be some small things that patients can do, but really the onus is on us to create the healthcare system that takes care of everyone.
Okay. Dr. Adam Gaffney, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, coming up, more stores are putting your favorite products under lock and key, citing shoplifting as a growing problem.
I took a closer look at what it's actually costing America's biggest retailers next. Retail companies are racing to secure items sold in stores as shoplifting rings continue to target some of the biggest chains in the country. I got a closer look at just how much these robberies are hitting the bottom line. One of the nation's preeminent retailers asserting scenes like these are growing more common around the country. Target saying they lost an estimated $763 million in lost and stolen inventory last fiscal year, and that they expect crime-fueled inventory losses to jump by another $500 million this year. The company's CEO spelling out the struggle on an earnings call this week.
Theft and organized retail crime are increasingly urgent issues, impacting the team and our guests and other retailers. The unfortunate fact is, violent incidents are increasing at our stores and across the entire retail industry.
Headlines of major stores closing in San Francisco with employee safety considered. And now the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, announcing a comprehensive plan to tackle the 44% uptick in retail theft in his city last year.
When someone witnessed the systemic thefts that you're watching in our establishment, it hurts the entire economic stability of the city.
The city also reporting that 327 repeat offenders were responsible for more than 6,000 retail theft arrests in 2022, and other executives at big box stores like Walmart and Lowe's also calling out the emerging shoplifting threat.
Theft is an issue. It's higher than what it's historically been.
I've been doing this for 32 years, and I can honestly tell you we've not seen anything to this degree in the past.
And Target says the problem is only getting worse.
Target says it's on track to lose more than $1 billion in inventory this fiscal year, even as locations keep beauty products like shampoo and lotions under lock and key.
Even laundry detergent is locked up with metal cords at some retailers, and cameras abound trying to prevent shoplifters and employee theft alike. It's hard to measure exactly how much organized retail theft has grown because the data is reported directly by retailers and usually cannot be verified. But the National Retail Federation, a lobbying group representing retail interests, says it's an increasing issue.
These thefts are happening all over the country.
So how did we get here?
Yes, get them!
The organization attributes some of the problem to empty downtown areas since the pandemic, plus lax policing and prosecution. The group also saying organized retail crime groups are recruiting people in tough spots financially, with easier ways to sell these stolen products online.
There's no question the prevalence of marketplaces has made it easier to resell these products. Our members are working with law enforcement every day to help identify the main places that these things are being resold.
Data from the organization shows inventory loss growing, with March saying it's approaching $100 billion nationwide, and it's taking a toll on shoppers too.
And what do you think about the fact that this is happening all across the country? Stores are having to keep things under lock and key because shoplifting has become such a problem.
I personally think it's a huge issue, and policymakers, law enforcement need to figure out something, because it's a shame that citizens are, just trying to do their regular shopping and are impacted by other people's poor decisions.
Here in New York, the mayor is hoping to strengthen policing and penalties, especially for repeat offenders. But the National Retail Federation emphasized the difference between someone stealing for personal use versus organized retail crime. They are pushing for federal legislation to make stealing goods adding up to $5,000 a federal crime. And more financial headlines now. Some of your favorite shows may be leaving Disney Plus and Hulu.
CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us with that and other money news. Good morning, Silvana.
Stephen Valerie, good morning to you. That's right. Disney will start removing shows from Disney Plus and Hulu next week. This is in a move to reduce losses in the streaming business, and reports say that Disney will pull content from the original slate for Disney Plus, which launched in November 2019, but also more recent shows such as Willow and The World According to Jeff Goldblum. Now, some of these shows hadn't been renewed, but were still available on Disney Plus and Hulu. The content must be removed to avoid additional costs, such as residual fees for creators and writers. Meta is pulling back the curtain on its efforts to build its own chips for artificial intelligence. Now, it's the first time the company has publicly discussed the project, and the chips will eventually power more advanced tasks in the metaverse, such as virtual and augmented reality, as well as generative AI, which is a technology that ChatGPT is based on. Investors have been tracking Meta's investments in AI as the company embarks on a year of efficiency. And YouTube plans to introduce unskippable ads for the streaming app on connected TVs. Viewers will see a single 30-second ad instead of two straight 15-second ads. YouTube will also test ads that appear when a viewer pauses a video, similar to the pause ad that Hulu rolled out a few years ago. The announcement follows a recent crackdown on ad blockers. YouTube wants to encourage people to subscribe to its premium version for an ad-free experience, guys. I mean, we used to sit through like 4 minutes of commercials without being able to do anything.
Right. Forced to watch them. All right, Silvana, thanks so much.
Sure thing.
Well, coming up, a cultural shift at the concert hall.
Why many fans who paid top dollar to see artists like Taylor Swift and Harry Styles say their experiences hit some sour notes, but it's got nothing to do with who's on stage. We'll explain next.
All right, now to a touching family reunion. An online genealogy website revealed a sister one San Diego man never even knew he had. And after years of speaking online, they finally got the chance to meet face to face at the airport. At San Diego's airport, David Aguirre awaits a special type of arrival.
My heart's racing right now. Last night it felt like Christmas. It's like Santa Claus is coming.
He's about to meet his older sister Janice for the first time. A sister he didn't even know he had for more than 50 years.
You know, what a blessing for her to reach out and try to find her real, blood family. I mean, it doesn't get better than that.
Janice, who was adopted before David was born, spent 30 years looking for her birth family. Then finally, she found a match on the DNA testing service 23andMe.
I seen a picture of her, and I could actually see my father in her face, everything about her. She was definitely related.
After meeting in the height of the pandemic, the two have been in touch over text and email, but no phone calls.
We communicated, shared stories, but never really picked up the phone, and I wanted to wait for this moment to actually hear her voice.
Now the wait...
She's right here coming down. She's right there.
...is finally over.
Look just like Dad.
See you. Just like you.
As for what's next...
Go have a glass of wine.
Yes, yes.
A shared family meal, decades in the making, and the chance to make up for lost time.
We're cherishing this.
Yes.
We're very lucky. We've lost quite a few siblings.
We
and
have
a lot
lost
of people,
siblings, yes.
But we have each other.
So happy for them. And with the at-home DNA kits becoming more popular, family secrets and unexpected relationships, well, they are also becoming more common. In fact, many services like 23andMe include warnings about the unexpected finds, and they allow people to opt out of connecting with relatives. Not everyone is happy as that pair was. Well, from Beyonce to Taylor Swift and Harry Styles, live shows are officially back and millions of people are packing stadiums to see those biggest stars.
But some concert goers say there's a noticeable difference in the crowds around them, leading to unpleasant or even frightening situations. They're posting their experiences on social media and calling for stricter concert etiquette. NBC News youth and internet culture reporter Callan Rosenblatt joins us now with more. Callan, good morning. So what are you hearing about how some people are behaving at these concerts, and any clues as to what's causing all of this?
Good morning. Well, there's tiered behaviors, I would say, at these concerts. The first tier is really, what some have described as mean girl behavior, where some people are competing for either better spots in the crowd, better videos. This is sort of driven by social media. The next tier is stuff we're used to. It's singing, it's screaming, it's dancing, it's holding signs. And there's a lot of debate whether that's okay, and a lot of those criticisms tend to come from people who are going to concerts for the first time and aren't really used to the etiquette that's typical at concerts. The third tier, I would say, is where it gets a little dangerous. That's throwing things at celebrities or performers, that's pushing one another. And we know that can actually be deadly, that pushing, which can lead to a crush. And so people are essentially saying, you have to be aware of the people who are around you. Concerts are a team sport here. And so what they're asking for is really awareness of the people around you and good behavior. The thought process on this is that, social media has been a driver of this behavior, as well as the fact that people are still sort of learning how to re-socialize post-pandemic. So that's kind of the thinking here on concert etiquette.
Yeah, that's true. It's a long road to relearning how to act in those situations. And that last tier you mentioned, Callan, it's actually had a big fallout. We've known several artists, including Taylor Swift, have had to stop their shows to sort of rein people in. Is that something that the artists themselves should get involved with?
Yeah, well, we see Taylor Swift, we've seen Billie Eilish, even Tyler, the Creator, either, shouting into the audience to stop pushing people or telling them to stop throwing things. I do think to some degree artists have a responsibility here, and that's the conversation online is if you see something happening in the crowd, you should say something or help someone who is in trouble. But it's also on the crowd. You have people around you. If someone falls, you help them up. I had one person tell me, if someone's thirsty, offer them water. Again, it's really that crowd mentality. We're all in this together. This is a joyful event. Let's help one another.
So, Callan, what are some of the unspoken rules people should be following when they're at a concert, and what can we do so everyone has a good experience?
Yeah, well, it all goes back to that team sport mentality, right? Like, these are your teammates when you're at a concert. You should be enjoying yourself and singing, but, you know, what I generally hear is try not to scream so that someone can't hear the artist that they paid a lot of money for. Respect the space around you. Don't film people without their consent. You know, I had one person tell me that they filmed a young person who was sitting, and they don't know if that person has, you know, a disability or a reason why they're sitting. Be respectful of the people around you, and please don't throw things at the artist because it can be dangerous.
And sometimes people holding up their phones and recording the entire show, that drives me crazy.
Who's going to watch that? That's what I don't understand. Who would watch that?
Callan Rosenblatt, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Sing, don't scream. I got to remember that. All right, that's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
The news continues right now. Good Friday morning. I'm Valerie Castro.
And I'm Stephen Romo. Joe and Savannah are on assignment. Right now on Morning News Now, a surprise visit. Breaking this morning, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy set to make an in-person appearance at the G7 summit this weekend. And this morning, he's attending a regional summit meeting in Saudi Arabia. At the G7, a diplomatic split screen will play out with President Biden focusing on threats from Russia and China, while back at home, negotiators are working to reach a deal before time runs out on the debt limit.
Can you, as an administration official, guarantee that the U.S. will not default on its debt?
What I can guarantee you is that President Biden takes this responsibility extraordinarily seriously.
Where things stand this morning as the countdown ticks closer to a potential economic crisis. Warning signs. This morning, prosecutors say the Air National Guardsman behind the biggest U.S. intelligence leak in more than a decade had been caught before, taking notes about classified information. We're digging into the new court filings and why, despite repeated warnings, he was still allowed to access classified information. Pulling the plug this morning, Disney is upping the ante in the ongoing feud with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, abandoning a planned billion-dollar campus in the Orlando area. What the decision means for the state, as NBC News has learned, DeSantis is on the brink of announcing a run for the White House. And making history at a time when most of his peers are still a year away from starting high school, one 13-year-old just graduated from college and in the process became the youngest black college student in Oklahoma history. We'll talk to the teenage prodigy about his jaw-dropping achievements and what he's planning on doing next.
I feel like an underachiever now.
Already, yes. A great story for your Friday. We do begin, though, this morning with that breaking news out of Saudi Arabia, where Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy just landed in Jeddah to attend the Arab League summit.
Right now, he's speaking to members of the league and is expected to meet with officials there, like Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The Crown Prince recently used his relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin to help with the release of 10 prisoners captured by Russia in Ukraine. From there, he is expected to travel to Japan and attend the G7 summit, where the war in Ukraine has topped the agenda. We have full coverage this morning, beginning in Japan with NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander.
At the G7 summit, preparations for a possible surprise, with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy expected to attend in person this weekend, according to a top Ukrainian official. It would be a daring trip as he tries to secure continued support in the form of arms and aid from the world's most powerful democracies. It would also be the first face-to-face meeting for Biden and Zelenskyy since the U.S. president's secret visit to Kyiv in February. The news comes as the G7 leaders here unveiled a new round of sanctions against Russia, while vowing to step up enforcement of existing penalties, all designed to further isolate Vladimir Putin. With Putin threatening to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine, here in Hiroshima, President Biden and U.S. allies today visited the Memorial Peace Park, honoring those who lost their lives when an American atomic bomb leveled this city during World War II. The summit, a show of resolve against new obstacles to peace and an effort to counter an increasingly assertive China.
What should the consequence be from the U.S. for China?
1, protect ourselves. 2, invest in ourselves. 3, make sure that we're straight and honest with them. The days in which you get to cheat and think that we don't care, those days have come to an end.
Also overnight, President Biden receiving updates on the ongoing debt ceiling negotiations back home. with the U.S. now less than 2 weeks away from running out of money to pay its bills, triggering what experts warn would be a catastrophic default. Aides telling the president steady progress is being made, but still no bipartisan deal.
Look, we're not there. We haven't agreed to anything yet, but I see the path that we could come to an agreement.
One key sticking point remains whether an agreement would include stricter work requirements for public assistance programs like food stamps and Medicaid, a move some Democrats oppose.
I would vote no.
That was Peter Alexander reporting. President Zelenskyy is expected to ask for F-16 fighter jets from the United States and its allies while at the G7. President Biden is under increasing pressure from Congress and others to provide those jets, but so far he has resisted, saying he's concerned it could further escalate the conflict. Let's bring in NBC News foreign correspondent Raf Sanchez with more on Zelenskyy's visit to the Arab League meeting in Saudi Arabia this morning. Hey there, Raf. So what has been going on so far this morning?
Valerie, good morning. President Zelenskyy just wrapped up his remarks at the Arab League summit. He spoke in English, and his message would be familiar to anyone who's been following his diplomacy around the world. He said Ukraine has been a victim of aggression. It is just trying to defend its own territory, and any country that supports freedom and sovereignty should stand with Ukraine. But then, interestingly, Valerie, he tailored his message for his largely Muslim audience at the Arab League. He pointed out that Ukraine has a large Muslim indigenous population, especially among the Crimean Tatars, and they are living right now under Russian occupation. He said he'd brought one of the community leaders with him to Saudi Arabia. Now, he flew this morning on a secret trip from Poland to Saudi Arabia on a French government jet, and then he's going to make his way from this meeting with, frankly, largely autocratic leaders to Japan, where he will be standing with President Biden and leaders of the world's foremost democracies later in the day. Guys.
And we know Bashar al-Assad, the leader of Syria, who's a close ally of Vladimir Putin. He is also expected at the summit. Are we expecting any interaction between him and Zelenskyy?
We don't know if the two men are going to meet, but Valerie, you can imagine that if they do, it is going to be a pretty frosty encounter. Assad is part of that rogues gallery of international leaders from countries like North Korea, like Belarus, like Iran, that have just been in absolute lockstep with Vladimir Putin over the course of the war, echoing his propaganda about Ukraine being run by neo-Nazis. And when people here in the Middle East look at images of Bakhmut in a smoldering ruin, it reminds many people of what happened in Syrian cities like Aleppo, where Vladimir Putin's forces, helping Bashar al-Assad put down the rebellion there, basically flattened large parts of that country. President Zelenskyy made an oblique reference to Assad's presence. He said, I know that there are people here who don't see the war the same way I do, but he said, I hope that people will take what he called an honest look at what's happening on the ground in Ukraine. Valerie.
And finally, Arab states have stayed mostly neutral in the war. Could we see leaders try and broker a peace agreement?
So over the course of the war, we have seen different countries try to play the mediator role. Israel in the first couple of weeks, China now. Saudi Arabia has also expressed an interest in trying to be a go-between between Russia and Ukraine. They have had some limited success, as you mentioned earlier, helping to broker a prisoner exchange between the two warring sides. We have seen Saudi Arabia trying to flex its muscle on the diplomatic stage, so we'll see. But it's worth pointing out that up until now, none of these mediation efforts have really led anywhere. Valerie.
Okay. Raf, thank you so much.
Well, new this morning, we're learning troubling new information about major oversights connected to the 21-year-old airman who was caught leaking classified government information online. NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delaney joins us now for more on that. Ken, in these court filings, prosecutors say that Jack Teixeira was previously caught with classified information. What do we know about that?
Yeah, this is a stunner, Stephen. Good morning. In this memo that the Justice Department is using to argue to keep him in jail, they disclosed that on 3 different occasions in his job at this airbase on Cape Cod, he was written up for acting suspiciously with classified information. In one case, he took notes, they said, and put a note in his pocket. In another case, he was seen doing a deep dive, as they put it, into a classified system. He was warned about that, not to do that. And then a third time, they caught him doing it in February of this year. And yet, on no occasion did they take away his access to classified information, nor apparently did they look at his social media, because if they had, they would have seen that he was leaking classified documents online the entire time. It's just very perplexing, Stephen.
That's remarkable to hear. You would think that the next step would be to check to see if he was using that information anywhere. So, Ken, what do we expect next in court to happen?
Well, there's going to be a big clash over whether he should remain in jail pending trial. The government is arguing that he's just too dangerous and unstable to release. And in fact, they're saying that he has a history of hiding what they call his unsavory character, including racist and extremist rants. Now, his lawyers are asking the judge to release him to his father's house, where he would be without weapons or access to the internet. And the judge has said that he will make a decision today, Stephen.
Wow, today. Okay, more to come on that. Ken, also curious here, could there be more fallout for the military officials who may have overlooked this or not taken it very seriously? Could there be more fallout for them?
It sure seems like it. Now, the military has already suspended 2 of his commanders at that base, and they also stood the base down from its intelligence mission. But the real question here is whether this is just an issue of incompetence at one base on Cape Cod, or whether there's more of a systemic issue across the military in terms of how it's dealing with classified information and the young people who are entrusted with it. I think there are many reviews going on right now to answer that question, Stephen.
Yeah, certainly raises a lot of questions. All right, Ken Delanian, thank you.
You bet.
Turning now to new details in that shooting in New Mexico. Police released body cam video Thursday of the chilling pursuit of the gunman and the heroism of the officers and community members during that deadly attack that left 3 people dead and injured 6 others. NBC News correspondent Aaron McLaughlin has the latest.
Hey there. In the nearly 7 minutes of footage released to the public, we see 4 different clips of how the incident unfolded. It's chaos caught on camera. As police continue to investigate, they're praising the actions of their officers and calling the mass shooting an assault on their close-knit community. We have to warn you, what you're about to see is disturbing.
On the left side. Left side.
This morning, chilling video of the Monday morning New Mexico mass shooting that left 3 dead. The Farmington Police Department releasing Ring and Police body cam footage of the terrifying incident.
I'm being told he's got an automatic weapon.
In the shooter's own neighborhood, the sound of gunshots ringing out as he fired at random, piercing homes and cars.
There were so many shots that it left the impression with some citizens that there were multiple shooters.
Officers are seen running towards the danger. And this is sobering perspective of the moment a sergeant was shot.
I'm shot!
Captured by her own body cam, her colleagues coming to her aid.
Subject is down! Subject is down!
Also caught on camera, an officer firing on 18-year-old shooter Bo Wilson, who was killed by police.
Subject is down. He is secured.
Police say Wilson was initially wearing a bulletproof vest modified with steel plates, removing it before a standoff.
He is yelling on the Ring footage, come kill me. It's my belief that ultimately in his head, he has made a decision that he's going to stand and fight it out until he's killed.
Police now say 97-year-old Gwendolyn Schofield and her 73-year-old daughter Melody died trying to save 79-year-old Shirley Voita, who was also killed. According to police, the shooting took place the day before the shooter's high school graduation. Wilson was armed with 3 different guns and with access to around 1,400 rounds of ammunition, firing an AR-15 assault rifle from his home. As of yet, there's no clear motive. Their only clue, this note found on the shooter's body, reading in part, "I'm at the end of the chapter." His family sending their condolences in a statement, writing Wilson was fighting a battle of mental illness that he lost. Another tight-knit community left to make sense of a senseless tragedy. All of the injured who were shot survived and have been released from the hospital. As the investigation continues, police say without the community effort to take down the shooter, this could have been so much worse. Back to you.
Okay, Aaron, thanks so much. This morning, there is a new salvo in the war between Disney and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, Disney has announced it's pulling the plug on plans to open a new billion-dollar office complex, a move that will cost the state at least 2,000 jobs. And this news comes just days ahead of Governor Ron DeSantis' plan to announce his run for president.
NBC News national correspondent Gabe Gutierrez joins us now with more. Gabe, good morning.
Valerie and Stephen, good morning. Now, this Disney drama has been escalating for more than a year now, and it appears CEO Bob Iger
Iger was not bluffing about canceling that project, and it comes amid new reporting that Governor DeSantis may be entering the presidential race very soon. This morning, NBC News has learned Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is preparing to formally announce he's running for president next week. That's according to two sources close to his political operation. DeSantis, who's already been making trips to critical early voting states like Iowa and New Hampshire, is expected to quickly become a top challenger to the GOP frontrunner, former President Trump. And it all comes as DeSantis is facing new questions over his escalating feud with Disney.
We will fight the woke in the legislature. We will fight the woke in corporate America. We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob.
The entertainment giant now scrapping plans to build a $1 billion office complex in Florida and relocate 2,000 jobs from California. In a letter to employees, a Disney executive writing, "This was not an easy decision to make, but I believe it is the right one," citing changing business conditions. DeSantis' press secretary firing back. Given the company's financial straits, falling market cap, and declining stock price, it is unsurprising that they would restructure their business operations and cancel unsuccessful ventures. They are the latest grenades in the war of words between DeSantis and Disney, which is also suing Florida for stripping its special self-governing status after the company opposed the state's Parental Rights in Education Act that critics call the Don't Say Gay law. Disney CEO Bob Iger responding last week before the office complex decision was announced.
Does the state want us to invest more, employ more people, and pay more taxes, or not?
Not just because Disney is Florida's largest single-site employer, but also because DeSantis married his wife Casey at Walt Disney World in 2009.
Who would have thought that when we're leaving Disney World as newlyweds, that, a decade and a half later, we'd be staring them down over a fundamental fight about, what is appropriate for our kids.
DeSantis has repeatedly said Disney should not get any special privileges that other companies don't get. And despite abandoning plans for the office complex, though, Disney does say it plans to invest another $17 billion in Florida over the next decade. But it really goes to show how high stakes this is and how much money is at stake over the coming years.
Yeah, this battle not slowing down. All right, Gabe, thank you.
Since last week, California Senator Dianne Feinstein has been back on Capitol Hill following that 3-month absence while she recovered from shingles. But this morning, there are still growing concerns about her health and whether she will be able to carry out her duties. It comes after her office confirmed she suffered some serious complications from her illness. NBC News senior congressional correspondent Garrett Haake joins us now for more on her condition.
Hey, good morning. Look, Democrats were thrilled to welcome Senator Feinstein back to Washington just last week, but that return has now gotten rocky. And now her office is revealing that her illness was far more significant than previously known.
New details this morning about Senator Dianne Feinstein's recovery from shingles. Her office sharing the 89-year-old was also dealing with a number of previously undisclosed complications, including a form of facial paralysis called Ramsay-Hunt syndrome and encephalitis, swelling of the brain. While the encephalitis resolved itself shortly after she was released from the hospital in March, she continues to have complications from Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, her office telling NBC News. The Senate's oldest member, Feinstein, returned to the Senate just last week after missing 91 votes in a 3-month span. As she recovers, Feinstein has been escorted in Congress by one of former Speaker Nancy Pelosi's daughters, whom a spokesperson says is an old friend. Many prominent Democrats have been supporting Feinstein, and they need her vote, especially on the closely divided Judiciary Committee, where last week she helped advance 3 stalled Biden nominees. And though some Democratic House members have called for her resignation, her Senate colleagues in both parties have defended her decision to finish her current term, her 6th, and retire next year.
She should be accorded respect and dignity.
Right now, she is performing as a United States Senator, doing her job.
But Feinstein has struggled with elements of that job, missing 4 votes since her return, and appearing to forget her own prolonged absence in a rare exchange with reporters this week. "I haven't been gone, I've been working," she told an LA Times reporter. "I've been here, I've been voting." Feinstein has been adamant about finishing her term and participating in that key Judiciary Committee, where on Thursday she sounded like her old self.
I was mayor of San Francisco for 9 years. There was no program more favorable with people than police on the streets.
With a debt ceiling vote likely soon in which every senator's vote could prove crucial, Democrats hope Feinstein remains healthy enough to stay in Washington.
Now, some of Feinstein's supporters say that the concerns about her fitness and the calls for her resignation are blatantly sexist. Former Senator Strom Thurmond, after all, retired at 100, and Republican leader Mitch McConnell spent 5 weeks at home this year recovering from a concussion. Then there's Iowa's Chuck Grassley, who's just 3 months Feinstein's junior. All of them, of course, are men.
Garrett, thank you so much.
All right, now let's get a check of your Morning News Now weather for the weekend.
Meteorologist Michelle Grossman joins us again with the latest forecast. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning to you both. Great to see you. And some of us are starting out soggy. Some of us will see stormy weather as we go throughout this Friday. Other of us really enjoying beautiful weather today before rain moves in tomorrow. And then the west, we're looking at that heat continuing. So starting with radar, you can see some rain is falling. That's where you see the greens and the reds, yellows. That's where we're seeing some heavy rain falling throughout portions of the southern plains, specifically Kansas, Oklahoma, into Texas. Parts of the Midwest also seeing some heavy rain falling. You can see where that cold front is. It's stretching from the Midwest all the way down to the southern plains. So we'll move to the east as we go throughout the day. Along this front, we're going to see scattered showers and storms, numerous showers and storms. That could produce some heavy rain as we go throughout this Friday. Also the chance for some strong to severe storms. Also watching a coastal low off the southeast coast. That's going to move slowly to the north and east. And as it does, it's going to bring the chance for some rain along the coast, especially in the Carolinas as we go throughout today. Otherwise, looking at a really nice day in the northeast. Enjoy that because we do have some pretty big changes coming on Saturday in the form of rain, so you need the umbrella to kick off your weekend. We're not looking at washout day on Saturday, but still looking at the chance for scattered showers pretty much all throughout the day. In the middle of the country, mentioning those severe storms, and then record highs continuing in the west. Temperatures climbing once again into the 80s and 90s. Boise are going to be right around 90 degrees as we head throughout this afternoon. In terms of the severe weather threat, that gets going this afternoon and evening. We need that daytime heating along with that cold front. That's going to trigger the chance for some storms. So where you see that yellow shading, including Fort Smith, Dallas, Waco, Austin, Abilene, San Angelo, those are the likeliest spots for seeing strong to severe storms. 15 million people at risk. The big takeaways here, we're looking at winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour, also the chance of some large hail. Those are probably the two likeliest scenarios. And then we could see a tornado or two. It would be brief. We can't rule that out, but it's not the biggest threat as we go throughout the afternoon. As we go throughout tomorrow, we're looking at a moderate risk or marginal risk, winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour, damaging hail, and also a tornado risk. It's low, but it's still there along the Gulf Coast. So from Louisiana into Alabama, Mississippi, and also Georgia, Atlanta, you are under the threat for severe storms as we go throughout tomorrow afternoon and evening. So in terms of the Saturday, the overall picture showing a spring beauty back behind this cold front. So as it sweeps through, we're looking at a really nice day in the northern plains, the central plains, the Ohio Valley into the Midwest, at least parts of the Ohio Valley. You can see that cold front kind of getting hung up there on Saturday. And then that rain stretching from New England all the way down through the mid-Atlantic, the Tennessee Valley into the southeast. And we could see heavy rain in portions of New England, record highs continuing out west. So what does that mean for Preakness? Well, we are looking at the chance for some scattered showers. So this will be in Baltimore tomorrow afternoon, 4:30. We're looking at clouds, chance for showers, 75. So that track could be a little bit wet as we go throughout the afternoon hours. And then we're looking at heavy rainfall, especially in portions of New England, especially along the coast where you see those brighter colors once again. That's indicating where we could see that heavy rain falling. So the umbrellas will be needed there. As far as today, we're going to need those umbrellas from portions of the Ohio Valley into portions of the southern plains and also the lower Mississippi Valley. And you can see those brighter colors on the tail end of that cold front. That's where we're expecting the chance for some storms. Then tomorrow, that cold front advances towards the east coast. That's why we're expecting the chance for some wet weather. We really need it in the northeast. We have some really dry conditions. It just comes on to kick off the weekend, so that's not ideal. Notice Boston, we're expecting a lot of heavy rain there, and that cold front extending all the way down to portions of the southeast, and we could see some heavy rain there as well. Then Sunday, conditions improve. We're going to see conditions improving throughout the mid-Atlantic, but guys, we're expecting a little bit of rain extending into the southeast as that cold front kind of gets hung up there. Back to you.
I feel like it's every weekend that it happens. We do need that rain, though.
I know.
All right. Michelle, thank you.
Yeah, it does feel like every weekend. You're right.
Yeah.
Coming up, got milk? A historic lawsuit is pitting students against the Department of Agriculture.
Yeah, the fight over milk and milk alternatives and why some students say they are being silenced in all this. That's coming up next.
We're back with a historic lawsuit filed by a high school student from Los Angeles. She is suing both the LA School District and the U.S. Department of Agriculture for allegedly blocking her from sharing information about traditional milk alternatives in her school.
Yeah, and in a statement to NBC News, a Los Angeles Unified spokesperson said, quote, Los Angeles Unified takes pride in empowering students to amplify their voice on issues they find important. They went on to say, quote, we continue to support our students with nutritious meals and healthy alternatives for those who have specific dietary requests. And we have that student with us on set here, Marielle Williamson. She's joined by Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine Associate General Counsel Deborah Press. Thank you both for being here.
Marielle, let's start with you. What prompted you to file this lawsuit, and why are you concerned about other students who might not drink regular milk?
Well, my school has pro-dairy information all over. Our cafeteria has got milk posters. Milk is highlighted more than any other product in our cafeteria. We learn about it in health. Over morning announcements, it's featured. So through personal research, I learned about the ethical, environmental, and social impact of dairy on students. And I wanted to highlight a different perspective because the information that we see at school is misinformation. And so in requesting to highlight this differing perspective, I asked to hold a campaign to discuss the benefits of plant-based milk and highlight the issues associated with dairy milk. And I was told that I could only hold this campaign if I promoted milk as well.
So, Deborah, your organization filed this lawsuit on behalf of Marielle. Why her case, and what's your strategy, I guess, behind this lawsuit?
Sure. So the National School Lunch Program is a set of federal laws that is administered by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And there's a specific law that prohibits any interference with milk marketing by schools. So that law raised a lot of concerns. Why are our federal meal programs silencing students who want to educate their peers or speak out about this one particular product? We think our school meal program should be in the business of feeding our students nutritious food and not silencing them when they want to talk about health concerns, ethical or environmental concerns. So that's why we were interested in this case.
And Marielle, tell us, what are you hoping to see happen at your school, potentially other schools across the country, as a result of what you're doing?
Well, two things. Most importantly, we wanted to raise awareness, and we continue to do that. Just highlighting, like I said, all of the issues associated with dairy milk. And we also want students to have the freedom of choosing a different option, whether it's plant-based milk or whether it's water. Because there was an issue a few years ago where water was served in the lunch line before milk at a school, and the dairy industry interfered because it affected their dairy sales. And so now milk is not allowed to be promoted in schools. So that just goes to show you just how much of a role the dairy industry has in nutritional guidelines and policies in our school system and for schools that participate in the National School Lunch Program.
And this seems like something that many people have not put a lot of thought into, but it's something that has growing awareness behind it. And Deborah, I know the Healthy Future Students and Earth Act is being reintroduced in Congress, something that could address students who may need accommodations for different options for milk. What do you think about that? What do you know about that?
That bill is a great step forward to making dairy milk alternatives more accessible to students who want to make that choice. It doesn't completely solve the problem of milk promotion in our school meals. It's still very much built into our federal school meal programs, but it really does a lot to remove a lot of the barriers for students like Marielle and many of the other students out there who don't want to support dairy or don't have ethical or environmental objections to it at school.
So a lot more to come on this. Marielle, Deborah, thank you so much for your time. A high school student bringing a lawsuit, not a small feat. We appreciate you taking the time for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Now for what's making headlines around the world, starting at the Vatican, where an arrest has been made after a vehicle rammed through its gates. NBC News foreign correspondent Claudio Lavanca joins us now from Rome with more. Good morning, Claudio.
Good morning, guys. Yes, on Thursday evening, a 40-year-old man was arrested after he drove through a main access gate at the Vatican despite attempts by Swiss guards to stop him. Now, Vatican security fired shots at the front tires and quickly closed down another gate that leads to sensitive areas within the Vatican, including St. Peter's Basilica and especially the residence where the Pope lives. The man was arrested, and the Vatican said he has psychiatric problems, meaning that this was more likely an act by a disturbed man and not a premeditated attack. Now let's go to Saudi Arabia, where the president of Syria, Bashar al-Assad, is to attend an Arab League summit for the first time in 12 years. Syria was suspended from the Arab League in 2011 following the bloody civil war in which 500,000 people have been killed so far. In a statement, the U.S. State Department said it did not believe that Syria merits readmission and that the U.S. are not going to normalize relations with the Assad regime and certainly do not support others doing that as well. And let's go to Spain, where scientists say they have unearthed the skeleton of a new species of carnivorous dinosaur. The dinosaur is believed to have been 30 feet long, weighed about 2 tons, and was part of a group of man-eaters. He was named Protothylitis sinstorensis, or something like that. But I'm sure that the humans who lived at the same time of that dinosaur, they were lucky they didn't know the name of this dinosaur, because by the time they pronounced them, they would have been eaten alive, probably.
Wow.
They were just screaming.
Good point. That is a good point. I'm glad you're the one that had to say that, though, Claudia. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Coming up, making the grade, an Oklahoma team just made history by graduating college at 13 years old.
I thought that was a typo, but it's true. 13 years old. Up next, we're talking one-on-one with the talented teen about this big achievement and what he's got planned next.
We're back with a very special guest. He just made history in Oklahoma by becoming the youngest black student to graduate college with a degree in computer science and cybersecurity, and he's just 13 years old.
Wow. Elijah Muhammad crossed the graduation stage last week, taking home not 1, but 4 diplomas from Oklahoma City Community College, adding to his already long list of accomplishments. Look at that. Elijah joins us now, along with his father, also named Elijah. Thanks so much, both of you, for joining us today. Elijah, first off, congratulations. That is an amazing accomplishment. So how did it feel to become the youngest black student to graduate with this degree? And we also know that you graduated alongside your brother. What was all that like?
It was amazing. It's an amazing feeling because my sister did it a few days before me. She graduated with my sister and my older brother, so it was an amazing feeling. I was just really excited.
A family affair for sure. Elijah, you have 4 degrees in total now from Oklahoma City Community College. What motivated you to get your degrees and all of the certificates that you have?
Well, I would like to say it's probably my whole entire family, because my mom's a doctor and my sister has her bachelor's degree and 2 associate's degrees. So with her being able to do that, I knew that I had an easier path and I had a support team that helped me throughout my college journey.
Wow. And Dad, let's bring you into this conversation. I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to know, how do you do this? Raising these kids, all of these accomplishments, you must be pretty proud.
I'm super proud. It is a team effort. It wouldn't be possible without my wife, Dr. Muhammad. So I got to shout her out. But it was my program is called Prep 1 Collegiate Academy, and we focus on customizing education, a different approach to where we find what they're good at doing, and then we just cheer for it and we cultivate it and we push them to be better. So I definitely think that if we're cheering for our scholars the same way we cheer for our athletes, we can get better results.
We've got a question for both of you. Elijah, what advice do you have for kids who might be thinking about taking college classes? And Dad, what advice do you have for parents considering enrolling their kids in college courses? Dad, let's hear from you first.
When it comes to putting young kids in college, I'm not necessarily a big advocate for saying just put them in college while they're, underage, kind of like my kids. We were able to do it because we had all the pieces, as the family unit and team and we definitely focus on them having recreational activities. One of the biggest questions that I get is, what about their childhood? Well, I tell people average kids go to school from 8 to 3, and my kids do their classes from 8 to 3 as well. So we're very particular about making sure they have breaks, free time, and then just being allowed to be kids, because the stress can be overwhelming if you don't have the support team and leadership to do it. However, I'm a very big advocate of college prep, meaning that you can start practicing on the ACT early. You can start reading and writing more, working on higher levels of math. You can do that stuff early, but just as far as shoving them into the college environment, that's not something that I would just personally recommend that you do with a kid that's underage, unless they have all the support pieces, mom, dad, brothers and sisters, to be able to do it. Because we're not doing this to stress them out. We're doing it to be inspiring, to let people know that we can do things in education.
Well, inspiring is certainly something that you have achieved. And Elijah, I also hear you're enrolled at Oklahoma State University and Langston University, so you're not done with the college degrees yet. What's next for you?
Well, I'm currently working on my bachelor's degree at Oklahoma State University in cybersecurity and forensics. And I'm also attending Langston University right now, working on another associate's degree. So after I finish, I'm going to finish my bachelor's degree and my associate's degree. Then I'm going to start working on my master's degree.
Wow. Well, we're definitely going to have to keep our eye on you and see exactly what you do. That is quite an accomplishment you've already made. Elijah, thank you both for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Coming up, countdown to tip-off.
The WNBA season officially kicks off tonight, and we're going to talk to this year's #1 draft pick. That's coming up next. We're back now with your financial headlines. Apple employees are being asked to work the old hard way without the help of AI.
CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us once again with more on that. Good morning, Silvana.
Valerie, Stephen, good morning. That's right. Apple is restricting the use of ChatGPT and other external artificial intelligence tools for employees, while as the company is developing similar technology. And the Wall Street Journal reports that Apple is concerned about the leak of confidential data by employees who use the programs. It's also told them not to use GitHub's Copilot, which is owned by Microsoft and is used to automate the writing of software code. OpenAI has launched a ChatGPT app for the iPhone, and an Android version is coming soon. Now, the iOS app is the first official mobile app for ChatGPT, which was previously available on the company's website. Apple has hosted apps that use OpenAI software in the App Store, but none were directly from OpenAI. And a group of TikTok creators are suing Montana over the state's new ban of the social media platform. They claim the ban is unconstitutional and violates the First Amendment and other laws. Montana's governor signed the bill into law on Wednesday. In 2020, the Trump administration tried to force TikTok and its Chinese parent ByteDance to sell the U.S. operations of the app or face the prospect of being shut down. TikTok and a group of fans challenged that in court and won, guys.
Yeah.
All right. Interesting fallout from that one.
Yeah.
Lots of TikTok fans there.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. The start of the WNBA season kicks off today.
Yeah, it is an exciting time for the league. The new season marks Phoenix Mercury center Brittany Griner's return to the court for the first time since her detainment in Russia. The season kicks off today with a 4-game lineup that includes the 2022 runner-up Connecticut Sun against the Indiana Fever, who have Aaliyah Boston, the #1 overall pick in the 2023 WNBA draft. And we have 2 All-Stars from the Indiana Fever joining us now for a preview of the season. Indiana Fever forward Aaliyah Boston herself, and Indiana Fever head coach Christy Sides joining us. Thank you so much for being here. And Aaliyah, let's start with you. Congratulations on being the #1 overall pick in this year's draft. That is incredible, heading to the Indiana Fever. What was going through your mind when your name was called?
I was just super excited. I mean, it's always a blessing. I mean, you put your name in a draft and you're just waiting to hear your name. And I was just so blessed. So it was so exciting.
And Christy, this is your first year as the head coach of the Fever. What are you expecting to see from your team this year? And how do you see Aaliyah making an impact in her rookie season?
Yeah, Aaliyah from the beginning just came in and made a huge impact from day one. I mean, she's an incredible player. She has a huge upside. She's going to be a great player one day. We're going to make sure of that. But she's impacted our players immediately. She has a leadership presence already. And overall, I don't want to say this right with her listening, but she's just an amazing human being, which makes it just fun every day to be a part of a team with her.
And Christy, so much of the offseason was, of course, focused on the return of Brittany Griner. So what was it like for you as a coach to see Griner's detainment play out and take so long for her to get home? And how did it affect your team and your players?
Yeah, we're all just really excited that BG's home and she's back and she's healthy and she's going to play this season, which, has made a lot of people happy. As a first-year head coach, to go and have to play against Brittany Griner and figure out how to scheme against her and figure out how to score against her, but also how to stop her, that's going to be tough. But I know there was a lot of answered prayers with her home, and we're excited to have her back.
Yeah, a good problem to have.
And Aaliyah, Brittany Griner's situation really put a spotlight on the gender pay gap in sports, particularly between the WNBA and the NBA. Like Griner, many WNBA players travel overseas in the offseason to supplement their income. According to data from Basketball Reference, in the 2021 to 2022 season, the average NBA player earned $5 million a year, while WNBA players earn an average of $130,000 a year. What do you think needs to be done to ensure players are getting equal pay?
Well, just to start, I feel like from where the WNBA first started and where it's at now, I think there's been a lot of growth. And so in the next couple of years, I know it's only going to continue to grow and try to help the pay gap. I mean, it's going to be super hard that the NBA makes millions, but I think as time progresses, it's going to continue to get better, but also just the support of the WNBA, having fans buy merch, having fans come to the game, talk about the WNBA, continue to show people that they are continuously interested in it, I think is going to help a lot. But it's a work in progress. I mean, the WNBA is one of the hardest leagues to be in right now, just because of the amount of talent and the amount of spots, but it's going to continue to progress.
Progress indeed. And Christy, I was going to ask you, the WNBA, of course, starting with so much interest this year being in women's sports. It seems like it's at an all-time high. There's been a lot of conversation about expanding teams and roster spots, getting more women out there on the court. So how do you see the league capitalizing on this moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's being talked about, the expansion of some more teams. It's going to happen really soon. I really believe that. But just what you said, it's a privilege to play in the WNBA. I mean, Aaliyah said it. It's the best league in the world. And it's, there's 144 spots, and we've had to make some really, really tough decisions. And there's some players that should be on rosters that just aren't right now. But, with expansion, hopefully that'll help figure some things out and let some players have an opportunity to play that deserve to be in this league.
Certainly hope so. All right, Aaliyah, Christy, thanks so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, guys.
Coming up, it's Friday, and that means it's time for your can't miss list.
Yeah, from fast cars to Little Mermaids, we've got the lowdown on everything you need to be on the lookout for. That's coming up next.
Welcome back. The Harrison Ford hit the red carpet at the 76th Cannes Film Festival for the highly anticipated premiere of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. It has been 15 years since Ford last took to the screen as the iconic archaeologist. Celebrities and fans pulled out all the stops for the premiere, which received a 5-minute ovation and largely positive early reviews. Ford also received an honorary award for his long career in cinema ahead of the screening. The film is the 5th installment in the franchise and will be released to larger audiences late next month. And that music pops into my head. Dun, dun, dun. So
there you go. 15 years. It seems like it's been longer than 15 years. I think I have something to catch up on.
Okay.
Well, the countdown to summer is on, and that means plenty of people, of course, be flocking to beaches nationwide.
But if you're looking for the absolutely best place for some fun in the sun, NBC News correspondent Sam Brock has the breakdown of this year's top 10 beaches.
With winter finally in the rear-view mirror, many travelers have been desperate for a little fun in the sun. Memorial Day weekend, the unofficial start of summer, is now just over a week away. The big question is, where are the very best beaches to stick our toes in the sand? For some answers, we turn to Florida International University's Dr. Stephen Leatherman, better known as Dr. Beach, who's out with his annual top 10 list.
Of the 50 criteria that you look at, what are the most important ones?
You got to have clean sand, clean water, and safe beach. And otherwise, it's not going to be any way on the list.
Other categories: watercolor with extra points for aqua blue and emerald green, to views and vistas, ease of access, lifeguards, even the presence of people, with the top spot going to a Florida Panhandle gem, St. George Island State Park.
So it has beautiful miles and miles of undisturbed, pristine beaches, big sand dunes, freshwater lakes. The water is emerald green. That's one of the most beautiful colors, I think, for the water, ocean water.
It's pristine.
It is.
As for the rest of the 10 best beaches, half the selections are located in just 2 states, Florida and Hawaii. Duke's Beach in Oahu grabbing the second spot.
And not as many people there. And it is spectacular. The backdrop is Diamond Head, the old crater, volcanic crater.
A few locations in the Northeast did manage to crack the top 10, including Cape Cod in Massachusetts, where Coast Guard Beach has a sand spit extending from glacial sea cliffs, and the lure of the Hamptons off New York's Long Island, where Cooper's Beach was high-ranking with beautiful sand dunes and easy snacks.
It's got a great snack bar, actually, for full lunch, great lifeguards, very safe.
For those living in South Florida, the rankings focusing on the right features.
I actually look right now to have like a calm beach, that it can have like a little deep space for the baby to enjoy the water.
When I tell you best beaches in the world, best beaches in the United States, what do you immediately think of?
Crystal blue water.
Yes, exactly.
Water quality for you is key.
Yes, and not a lot of seaweed.
In fact, the presence of potentially record levels of seaweed has caused the biggest shakeup in this year's ranking, with beaches like this Key Biscayne beauty moving off the list because of it.
Let's face it, it looks bad, it smells, it rots on the beach. It's just very unpleasant.
How many beaches have you personally visited?
All of them. There's 650 major public recreational beaches in the United States.
You've been to 650 beaches?
I've been to all beaches in the United States, every beach.
Wow, Valerie and I are jealous of that job.
What a
That's
job.
incredible. Our thanks to Sam Brock and, of course, Dr. Beach himself, Stephen Leatherman, for that report.
And while you'll have to wait until next month to see the new Indiana Jones film, we have a few that you can watch this weekend.
Yeah, that's right. It's Friday, which means it is time for our weekly Can't Miss list. Nigel Smith, who is People's senior news editor for movies, joins us now for a look at all the films and shows we need to check out. And we've got to talk about the latest installment from Fast and the Furious, Fast X. What can you tell us about that?
Fast X. So the title implies this is the 10th movie in this franchise.
Oh, I actually did not put that together.
Right?
Yeah.
I know. So it's been going on for a while. It started out pretty small, and now it's the biggest it's ever been. This is probably the biggest budgeted film in the franchise so far, and the car chases are the craziest you've seen in the franchise, and that is saying something. If you remember the last one, they went to space in a car. So, yeah, just to give you a sense of how big this movie is. But you have a lot of returning cast members, and then you also have Jason Momoa. He makes his franchise debut as the big villain in the film franchise, and he is so much fun. He's kind of given free reign just to be a little crazy and really, really funny. And you also have Brie Larson as one of the good guys. And a lot of surprise cameos. I'm not going to give any away, but if you want to look them up on the web, you can.
I can't believe it's the 10th one.
I know. Yeah.
All right. Something that's getting a lot of splash is Disney's new live-action version of The Little Mermaid. What can you tell us about that?
Oh, wow. Well, what hasn't been said about this movie? Everybody is so excited to see it. Fans of the original, people who haven't seen the original. It's going to be a huge hit for Disney, I have no doubt. Halle Bailey is extraordinary in the lead role. I got to see it this week, and she gives a really, really star-making performance as Ariel. Her voice is extraordinary. She brings new range to songs that you've heard a million times. And Melissa McCarthy, she is fantastic as Ursula, the Sea Witch. She really makes the role her own. She brings a lot of her own comedy to it. And there's new songs courtesy of Lin-Manuel Miranda, and they fit seamlessly into the film. And it's just really, really fun and really sweet.
I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, so many stars in that one. Also wanted to ask about another remake, White Men Can't Jump, from 1992, being remade for Hulu. What do we know about that one?
Yeah, well, a lot of fans of the original, when they first heard that Hulu was remaking this movie, they weren't so happy. Didn't really think it needed a remake. You know, the original starred Woody Harrelson and Wesley Snipes. And now you have rapper Jack Harlow making his movie debut, and he's actually really, really good. He wants to make a lot more films, and I think this is a really good calling card for Hollywood. Hollywood. It brings a new fresh spin to the tale that everybody loves. And you also have one of the last appearances of Lance Reddick, the late actor, the John Wick star. So if you're fans of him, definitely check this one out.
A couple of fun shows. The first is a docuseries starring Rainn Wilson. He, of course, was Dwight on The Office. And the other is season 6 of Selling Sunset. I'm also excited about this. What can you tell us about those?
Yeah, well, if you're a fan of The Office and travel shows, it's a combo you probably didn't really see coming. This Rainn Wilson travel docuseries is something you want to check out. All the episodes are streaming now on Peacock, and he travels the world, including places like Iceland and Ghana, in search of the meaning of happiness. So it's an uplifting and sweet show. And not so uplifting and sweet is Selling Sunset, the Netflix show, one of the most popular reality shows there are out there. So much drama. Unfortunately, Christine Quinn, the villain of the previous seasons, is not back this time around, but they have a new set of characters and returning ones. And if you love real estate, sunny Los Angeles, and really good-looking people, you definitely want to watch that.
What's not to love about that?
Wow, it's so popular, and I have not seen a single episode. I got to get caught up on that.
You have to catch up on that and Indiana Jones.
Yes, that's right. I got my weekend assignments. All right, Nigel Smith, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But your news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.